So you can imagine, it was really my dark days. If that was my job.
How do you translate ish in English?
When I go back home and I'm trying to sound Indian,
people would be drooling over these kids.
Hello, everyone. I am Oishika Chaudhary.
I am Sania Irfan.
And we are Yaars, truly.
You see, sir, I can talk English, I can walk English, I can laugh English because English is a very funny language.
You get no points for guessing what today's episode is about.
No points at all. So, Sania, question. Did you go to an English medium school?
I did. And in fact, going to an Urdu medium school in Pakistan was looked down upon. It was even a bit of an insult कि ये तो Urdu medium है.
Yeah, it was pretty much the same in India. You didn't go to a Hindi medium school or a Bengali medium school unless you could just absolutely not afford an English medium school. And I actually was not aware of this till I watched the Irfan Khan movie English Medium. But apparently some parents go to extreme lengths to get their kids admitted in an English medium school.
तो उसके लिए गाड़ी क्या गया है?
अरे तो क्या हुआ?
अबे उसके लिए कोई अपने को दाव पे लगाता है?
अरे यार हमारे पास है ही क्या और दाव पे लगाने के लिए? सरकारी स्कूल में पढ़ाएगा पिया बिटिया को?
That scene from Hindi medium was honestly very hard for me to watch, and it was shocking. I did not know that the less privileged in India would have to do such dreadful things to themselves just to get their child admitted to an English medium school. How about your school, Sania?
Our school tried to strike a balance by integrating Urdu literature very early on in as many parts of the schooling system as they could, but ultimately it was an English medium school. So we were expected to speak English almost everywhere else outside of our Urdu classes. I remember being a prefect and greeting parents
Of course you were a prefect.
Were you a prefect?
Yes.
So back in my glory days, I'm kidding. So I was greeting parents as they were coming in, and I was talking to them in Urdu, and this teacher comes to me and says, "You're a prefect, you're representing the school, you should talk to parents in English."
Oh, yeah. Back in my dark days when I was the prefect, I was part of my jobs was to snitch on people who weren't speaking in English in the hallways or during the recess. So you can imagine, it was really my dark days if that was my job. But it was so weird, right? Because that kind of subconsciously taught us English is the superior language and you should speak that more. And this resulted in this manifested itself in various different ways. So we used to have an English debate and a Hindi debate, and more people would show up to the English debate, and it also had a bigger budget. But even more messed up was that I think collectively we all respected the English teachers more. We'd greet them in the hallways and stuff, and then Hindi teachers were respected less and Bengali teachers even less.
Oh wow, I wouldn't say it was that intense in our school, but even things like our reading lists were skewed towards English books.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure parents back in Calcutta, they will also buy English storybooks for their young kids in an effort to get them to speak English from a very early age. In fact, I remember we had this book, canonical book called Ren and Martin, which had this super red cover, and they had these outdated grammar rules, and my mom would make me practice the grammar exercises in the book. And it was just weird, right? They had this super outdated rule, how you're supposed to use the modal verb shall with the with I. So I shall drink water, I shall go there. First of all, that just sounds so phony. And second of all, it's weird. What if I really intensely want to do something? I will drink my water and I must drink my water. I will not shall drink my water.
Ren and Martin is such a throwback. I think there's a Ren and Martin book still in my house somewhere. And even though I wouldn't say my parents and grandparents wanted me to excel at English this much, I think in general, the cultural aspiration is to make your children sound like British kids or American kids. So when we, for example, got someone who had been raised in the UK or somewhere in the Anglosphere and they came to our school, people would be drooling over these kids with British accents and American accents.
Yeah, we also had this girl come to our school from Australia, and then all the teachers were so impressed with her, and she got sent to all the debate competitions and stuff too.
And you actually pointed this out, that it wasn't just an obsession with kids who were inclined towards the West, but also school names that sounded more Western, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. We have a couple schools like back in Kolkata again, whose names are like they're named after Roman or like Spanish saints and stuff. And those schools are so much harder to get into, primarily because they're considered more prestigious. And so more and more parents are really trying hard to get their kids enrolled in those schools.
And now that you say it, we also have these schools established by the British in the colonial era that are still considered some of the most prestigious schools in Pakistan.
Yeah, and this prestige that's associated with basically non-desi sounding school names, it goes beyond schooling and it really seeps into our culture.
Yeah, you're right, because we assume English is the superior language, and in a twisted classist way, it's also superior because it's the language of the upper class. I just love this comedy skit where Varun Grover really tears this notion apart.
अमीर लोग वाटर चेस्टनट जानते होंगे, मिडिल क्लास लोग सिंघाड़ा जानते होंगे। 30 रुपए किलो होता है वाटर चेस्टनट, बोल के 800 रुपए की डिश देते हैं, उसमें 2 होते हैं काट के छोटे छोटे। तो नाम से ही बड़ी इज्जत बदल जाती देश में, है ना?
And English, it's not just correlated with like being rich or being the language of the upper class, but it has like, it's this weird association that at least we've made up back in India, is that the better you speak English, the smarter you are as a person. And it's just, so sad.
And it's not just knowing English, but also knowing how to pronounce English words correctly. That is correlated with smartness and determines how much respect you often get. I think of English Winglish, where Sridevi's character goes on this whole journey where she wants to learn English after she feels disrespected by her family for not knowing it.
क्या तुम्हारा वो झांस डांस?
Mom, it is not jazz dance. It is jazz dance.
And I kind of understand why people emphasize on knowing English in today's day and age, but this obsession with like you have to get the accent right and you have to pronounce words a certain way to get respect, that's just so frustrating.
Funnily enough, these days I'm getting served all of these ads about how to pronounce words like a native speaker.
Native to what, though?
I don't know. It just says if you say not instead of not, you'll sound more American. It's weird, right? Our pop culture does this too, though.
Yeah.
We're also to blame because
Definitely.
if you don't pronounce English in the right accent, that often becomes a cause of humor.
मोहिनी के बारे में 2 बातें बताना तो भूल ही गया। पहली, मोहिनी दी loves the English. और दूसरी, मोहिनी दी can't speak the English.
Yes, teacher Myla. Disturb not, please.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird. We had these people in our school who would like fake accents based on what was considered to be the prestigious accent.
I used to fake an American accent until a friend knocked me to my senses, but I used to think that's just the right way to speak.
Yeah, and I kind of relate to that because when I moved to America, I started saying certain words the American way in order to assimilate into the culture more easily. But now that I've been in America for like 5 years, it's just weird when I go back home and I'm trying to sound Indian and I can't pronounce words the way I used to.
Yeah, some of those changes happen subconsciously too. And I remember coming to the US and making sure I was hearing myself and holding on to my Pakistani accent. So, clearly we both used to think English is more prestigious, and then we were holding on to our languages, our accents. So when did the switch flip for you?
Honestly and ironically, it was after I moved to the US. And, we had a very diverse class of people. And I remember most of them thought it was so cool that I was trilingual and that I could read 3 languages that have completely different scripts and like different ways of speaking completely. And that's when I realized it's actually pretty cool that, I'm so good at all 3 languages and I want to be equally good in all 3. Did you have a moment like that where the switch flipped for you?
I think it was more gradual, and a lot of the credit goes to the people I was surrounded by. So I used to debate and we talk a lot about things like colonialism. I had really great friends who taught me about it. And very importantly, a lot of my teachers, and including English teachers who taught us that English is not, in fact, the premium language, that made a big difference. And then finally, I think my understanding of colonialism and why we're so obsessed with English, that started to break down with exposure to social media.
Yeah, dude, that actually reminds me of something. I don't know if this is the case in Pakistan as well, but definitely in India, there was this idea that if you spoke English really well, you were probably more progressive or more liberal.
I think that's true in Pakistan too. And I think the right wing in Pakistan often considers
Mhm.
Urdu to be their property, their jagir, and liberal or progressive ideas are deemed to be coming from English and are therefore Western impositions. But that's just not true. Like Hindi, Urdu, so many of our regional languages have such a rich tradition of resistance. I think of Hum Dekhenge, for example, which was written by a Pakistani poet, Faiz Ahmed Faiz, became an anthem of resistance when violence struck at JNU in 2020.
Yeah, and some of the most progressive people that I've ever met in my life, a lot of them didn't speak a word of English, they spoke just Bengali. And do you remember that show, Satyamev Jayate?
I do. It was one of the most progressive Indian shows that at least I have watched, and it was conducted in Shuddh Hindi.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad how we're taught all these things, as kids, and the environment we live in focuses so much on the importance of English and the superiority of English that somehow I feel like I lost touch with my Hindi or Bengali roots because so much emphasis was put on English. And I remember when I was a kid, I could only speak Bengali because my family members spoke only Bengali. And then I went to school and it was a majority Hindi speaking population. So I had to learn that. And then somewhere things changed and it was like, oh, if you want to be part of the cool kid group and you wanted to sound smart, you would have to be super fluent in English. And I sort of lost touch with my Hindi and Bengali roots, but I feel like I'm trying to not be that person anymore and reconnect with my more traditional roots by watching or listening to more Hindi and Bengali music and songs and watching movies in those languages.
I feel that too. I need to work on it, and it's embarrassing, but I feel more comfortable holding a conversation or making an argument in English than in Urdu. And a lot of us know this because the joke in Pakistan goes that most people forget how to count after 30 in Urdu.
Yeah, I can't count beyond 30 in Bengali. I don't think so.
Oh, that was the one thing that I felt very proud of. I could do 31, 32, 33.
Oh, it's the same in Hindi and Bengali too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can count in 3 languages now, which is great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sometimes I also feel like, these regional languages, regional to us, I guess. But yeah, our languages, they can encapsulate a much wider range of emotions and just things in general than English can. So for example, in Bengali, we have this word called jhiji, which refers to the specific kind of numbness that you get, when the blood flow stops in a part of your body. And I tried to look up what it's called in English, and the only thing I could find was the scary sounding carpal tunnel syndrome or Raynaud's phenomena, which sounds like, I don't know, some physics concepts, but really in Bengali, it's just jhiji.
Yeah, and there's such poetic languages too. Like, think of the term love, and you have pyar, mohabbat, ishq in Urdu, Hindi, but you can't translate. How do you translate ishq in English, right? Like, even adoration doesn't do justice. And in Urdu literature, we also talk about ishq-e-majazi versus ishq-e-haqiqi, which is a more spiritual form of love. And I think our literature at least recognizes this about Urdu, and Urdu speakers love the shout out. All of this reminds me of this poem by Shailja Patel, where she's talking about her father who knows how to speak beautiful languages, Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi, Kiswahili, Gujarati. And then she says, 5 languages, 5 different worlds, yet English shrinks him down before white men.
Wow, that's a really beautiful line. To the point of having progressive ideas beautifully expressed in Hindi or Urdu and Bengali, here is a cover of a song from the show we talked about earlier, Satyamev Jayate, and it's by Swanand Kirkare, and it's composed by Ram Sundar.
Before we move to the cover, we need to talk about something that has recently shook people across India and Pakistan, the sexual assault and murder at RG Kar Medical College.
This incident is not isolated. There are so many cases that go unreported, so we should use our collective outrage and shock to fight for a safer world for women, regardless of class, caste, or religion.
There's so much we can do to contribute to the safer world. It starts by teaching ourselves and any boys you have influence over to see women as equal human beings.
Today, we have an urgent call to action for you. We would be grateful if you could sign the petition in the description for this episode, and if you could educate yourself on what happened and share whatever it is that you learned on whichever social media platform you're comfortable with. The hashtag to learn more about this incident is also mentioned in the description.
Every post can reach a new person, and while a petition isn't guaranteed to make change, a larger number of signatures or shares also signals that hundreds of thousands and even millions of people are furious. Numbers always help add pressure to the people in power. With that said, here is the song Ori Chiraiya, which we covered and which feels even more apt now. It's about protecting the girl child.
तुझ